Have you ever been absolutely blown away by some people's ability to handle stressful and challenging scenarios? And just life in general? How is it that some people can wake up to a list of chores, assignments, and bills, reminders of past trauma, and the impending doom of a reality void of hope, substance, and purpose, and yet still be completely fine with all of that? That is because they have this certain skill. This skill is what all athletes, high-performing entrepreneurs, and even Buddhist monks have attained. But the greatest part is, this skill isn't just available to exceptional people. In fact, this skill is usually what made these people exceptional in the first place. And that skill is creating the right mental frameworks. To explain what mental frameworks are, I want to take you through two very similar stories that I've gone through in my lifetime. One from my past, and one that happened quite recently. I was about 13 years old and I had just finished another day of 8th grade. As I got off the bus, my backpack straps were digging into my shoulders a little bit more than usual. Not only did I have a load of homework to catch up on, but I had just gotten my report card back and I was afraid to show my parents that I had gotten a D in geometry. The stress of that day's misfortunes and failures were weighing on me as I walked through the front door and my mom gave me a good look in my sorrowful eyes. As they pierced through me like someone who had just found out that their son wasn't the bright student that she hoped he was, I was prepared for the worst. But surprisingly, she hadn't yet found out about my report card. The reason she looked at me that way was because she wanted me to help her make tonight's dinner, and she knew I'd probably be reluctant towards the act of cooking. You see, my mother has always loved to cook, and she's damn good at it too. She'd always get me to try new things she enjoyed, like gardening, reading, and now cooking. But I would always give up because of my unwillingness to learn and my mindset that made me give up far too easily when I failed something. And failed I did. Tonight's dinner was her famous bolognese, one of my favorite dishes of hers. She thought that since I was so enthusiastic about consuming the dish, this might be the dish that I would enjoy making. Alright Cole, all you need to do is mince the garlic. You just take a clove, chop it finely, then press it down with a knife. Then chop up some onion for me too. Think you can do that? Well, I'll try since you're making me, I said. I tore off a clove from the garlic and started peeling off the skin. After a few chops, I tried pressing down on it. Then I chopped some onion. Alright Mom, I'm done, I said. She looked over at my creation with a slightly disappointed face. It was very clear that I half-assed the whole thing and I did not chop up the onion or garlic enough for the dish. That's not really how it's done, she said. I pouted, got pissed, and said, well fine, you just do it then, as I ran up to my room to escape the thought of trying something challenging and instead hopped on the Minecraft server with the boys. This past week, I found myself in an L chain. It's exactly what it sounds like. L after L after L. It started off with a poor night's sleep. An unwanted nightmare decided to sporadically attack my slumber and disrupt my usual positive mentality upon waking. But I didn't let it faze me. I told myself, rough days are inevitable. They're part of the process and they help make the good days a little brighter. Just keep moving forward. And so I picked myself up out of bed and went on with my day. After a couple hours of going through the motions, I got a call from my accountant. He finally told me how much I owed in taxes after a successful past year. It was much more money than I had hoped, and it triggered the sort of thoughts I used to have when I was making just enough to support myself. But I told myself, well, that's a part of being more successful. It just means I've made it farther than I ever imagined I would at my age. And I became much more fine with it. Then I hit my workout, and for the third straight back workout in a row, I plateaued and didn't hit a PR on weighted chin-ups. And just before I started to beat myself up, I asked myself, how can I push past this plateau? There is a solution out there for me to find. There's a way to fix this. So we didn't hit a PR on that set, just focus on hitting a PR on the next set. And hit a PR on the next set, I did. That workout turned out to be one of the best ones that I had in a while. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, but I still had one more thing left to do: make a high-quality recipe for my Instagram page. Well, here we are, back to cooking. And guess what? At 25 years old, I now love the process of cooking because it's a fun way to challenge myself, develop more of a personality, and make restaurant-quality food at a much cheaper cost. That day's recipe was something that I had never tried before: dumplings. The filling was simple. Chop up some veggies, add tofu, and saute. But rolling out and folding the dough over the filling is where I really started to struggle. I tried multiple times to cut out the right amount of dough in the right shape with the right technique, but I kept failing. I started to get extremely frustrated with myself. After everything that had happened and how tired I was and how mediocre I thought this dish would turn out to be, I was ready to snap. But just before I did, I allowed a period of time between my thought and the habitual negative reaction. And I reflected on that time when I was a kid making dinner with my mom. "You've been here before," I said. "You failed so many times at a bunch of different recipes in the past. It's your first time making this. It was bound to happen. Calm yourself and just keep trying." And eventually, after several failed attempts, I made a few that were Instagram worthy. What was supposed to be an inevitably bad day that seemed to be pre-designed for me to fail actually turned out to be a huge win at the end. All because I had the right mental frameworks. These stories are what really allow you to understand the concept of mental frameworks, but to help with your comprehension, allow me to provide a more precise definition. A mental framework is a set of rules, questions, or quotes that you apply before, during, or after times of struggle. Think of them as a sort of coping mechanism without diluting yourself from reality. This is at the crux of some of my most popular videos on this channel. I provide you with a mental framework, or rather, a different way of viewing and reacting to something challenging or stressful, so you can apply that mentality whenever you are in a similar situation. When you do this, all of the inevitable failures and sufferings that usually fuel sadness and apathy within you start to fuel motivation, peacefulness, and a hunger for more. The only thing is, in all of these videos, I've never really explained how you can make your own mental frameworks that best apply to your life. And to do that, it all starts with a pause. Famous author Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." This is what you must train yourself to do. Instead of being reactive, you must become proactive. Once you feel yourself experiencing unwanted negative thoughts and emotions, or you're presented with an unfavorable situation, you must pause before your innate or learned emotional response comes out of you. This is something that does require a lot of training because it doesn't come naturally to most of us. Most of us are just functioning on autopilot at all times. So if you do find yourself struggling with this first part, the best thing that I can recommend for you, if you don't do it already, is meditation. When you consistently meditate, you are rewiring your brain's automatic response to stress, sadness, and failure to a more manual, paused response. That is because when we meditate, we transform our perspective on our negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions from rejection to total acceptance. And that radical acceptance of what you have just gone through, are going through, or will go through is what's needed to initiate that pause. After you've given yourself a pause, you must follow it up with a how. And usually the question is, how can I find solace in this emotion? How can I get through this failure? How can I optimize this? Or how can I be better without totally deluding myself? And again, I say without delusion because many people are functioning under egotistical, inaccurate mental frameworks. For example, let's say we have a person who clearly knows nothing about attraction and dating and is always getting broken up with or rejected immediately. A deluded mental framework that person might have is, every time I get hurt or rejected, I'm gonna tell myself it's the other person's fault and I had nothing to do with it, so there's no problem with me, and that'll make me feel better about it. This is clearly not the actual case, and it does not cause any sort of enhancement of your self-awareness through reflection. A solid mental framework would be one that gives you an accurate, positive perspective on a situation or feeling, gets you to understand yourself more, and provides some sort of introspection and reflection. So now let's apply what we've learned to the second story that I told you guys, specifically the part where I was talking about getting plateaued on my chin-ups. First, I took a pause after I failed the rep that would have had me hit a PR. I initially had sort of a pissy reaction, but then I did almost a sort of micro meditation to become indifferent towards it, which is just a more complicated way of saying I took a pause. I then asked myself, instead of getting pissed, how can I see this from a different perspective? Well, it just means there's something new that I need to learn to get past this plateau. I still have room to improve, and improvements are what bring me fulfillment. So this failed rep will ultimately bring me to more fulfillment if I just keep trying. And then I told myself I'll just do research about it when I get back to my apartment. But then I asked myself, how can I make this workout more successful? The answer was to focus on the fact that I had stayed consistent for so long and still had the potential to hit PRs on other sets and exercises. And the last step was to make sure I remembered this perspective and learning process, or rather the mental framework, by writing it down. And that is what you must do too. In order to make a framework that really sticks, you gotta write the framework down when you figure it out. Eventually, you'll have accumulated just a list of frameworks, so every time you're presented with some sort of unfavorable, negative situation like we talked about earlier, you can look at this list and say, okay, what's the best framework that applies to this and that will trigger a growth mindset in me and allow me to view this in a positive perspective for myself. And I recommend that every day you review these frameworks until they become almost automatic. There are endless ways to produce more mental frameworks for yourself, like watching my videos or through your own introspection or through studying different philosophies. And as you do this, little by little, your view on reality will improve while staying disillusioned, your setbacks will turn into growth opportunities, and life will become more and more bearable. I would say writing in general, the many ways in which I write, whether it's storytelling, whether it's introspection, or whether it's creating mental frameworks, it just really helps to enhance my life in all aspects. And to help with that, I've been using a class on the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. If you have a love for learning and you want to develop this growth mindset and develop the right mental frameworks, then you should check out Skillshare because it's a platform with thousands of inspiring classes to choose from. They have tons of different types of classes on there, whether you're trying to start a YouTube channel or you're into entrepreneurship, marketing, philosophy, you want to get better at art, whatever you're trying to get better at, they probably have a class for you. I am always trying to improve the storytelling and writing in these videos, and a class that I've been taking to help me with that is Writing for Inner Calm, a mindset methods and daily exercises for all by Dani Shapiro. I was hoping she would provide a sort of mental framework to help me with my writing process, and specifically in that class she talks about a 4 quadrants exercise, which is basically like a review of your day and how to observe the world better for writing. Skillshare is by far my favorite learning platform out there, so if you're interested in learning new skills with me, then go to the link in the description or use my code Hastings, and the first 1,000 people that do that will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. Go take advantage of that free trial offer, and thank you to all my patrons on this channel on Patreon. If you don't know what this is, it's a platform separate from YouTube where I'm putting out exclusive content, and you can talk to me one-on-one over the phone on there. That's in the description as well. If you're interested in learning about a mental framework that I use when in social situations so I don't become socially awkward, check out this video right here. But that's it. I'm out. Peace.